What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 1 of No Shame with Shane. I'm your host, Shane Fordham, for all your shameless sports takes. Really excited to kick off this journey with you guys this summer. I hope all you Philly fans are tuning in. We got a lot of basketball to talk about, a lot of football to talk about, a lot of baseball to talk about, this year. So really excited to get started. Been planning this for a long time. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, first topic of the day. MIKAL Bridges traded to the New York Knicks, rejoining old Villanova teammates with Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, this is a 10 out of 10 move. I love this move for the Knicks. This is a guy that they needed. They needed another wing, a guy who is capable of playing defense and scoring, being able to give Josh Hart a break, not having to run him like a mule for 40 plus minutes a game. I think joining him as well as re-signing OG Anunoby, creating that wing tandem is going to be very, very valuable for Knicks, especially when it comes to playoff basketball. OG Anunoby, we know, is a defensive guy. He can score when he needs to. He can play good defense in the post as well as on the perimeter. MIKAL being more of a perimeter guy who is more of a scorer. I think this Knicks team is more dangerous of a team than they were last year. We're looking at this team who has now become one of the deepest teams in the league. Having their bona fide superstar, in my opinion, in Jalen Brunson, a guy who can give you 35 to 40 points a night, rises to the occasion. No lights have proven to be too bright for him yet. They got their 3-and-D guys, their spot-up guys, and Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart. Josh Hart, especially being a transition guy, a guy who can play defense, who will hustle for a rebound, and who can give you a bucket from 3. Then they even brought in Bogdanovich, another spot-up 3 guy, in with MIKAL Bridges. And then they also have the size to contend. At least they did. They're still working on that Hardenstein deal, but Mitchell Robinson, a quality big that can be used to throw at the competition they have in the East, which we'll touch on in a minute. And I take no shame in saying this. I think acquiring MIKAL Bridges makes the New York Knicks the favorite to win the Eastern Conference this year. I think acquiring MIKAL Bridges, it gives them different options in terms of lineups and styles of basketball that they can play successfully this year. They can run. They have the lineups to play small ball. They can win with size, and then they can beat you in transition. I mean, this is a team that has become one of the deepest teams in the NBA. If you're looking at this Knicks roster from top to bottom, there's no team in the East that they can't beat in a 7-game series. If you want to look at them against the Bucks, the duo with Giannis and Dame alone is not enough to stop this Knicks team. We saw how much they struggled defensively. They don't have the role players and surrounding cast to be able to match up against that Knicks team. If you're looking at the Sixers, Joel Embiid isn't going to be healthy in the playoffs no matter what. We know that. No matter how long he rests during the regular season, even missing a significant portion of the regular season this year, disqualifying him from MVP contention, he still couldn't withstand the playoffs. And the Sixers are only going to go as far as Joel Embiid will take them, as long as all of our eggs are in his basket. And even if he's healthy, the Knicks have the size to be able to combat Joel Embiid, just like they have the size to be able to combat Giannis and Brook Lopez. And even the Miami Heat, we know they have their injury troubles, but they don't have as much talent as the Knicks right now. The Knicks are the best team in the Eastern Conference. And I think it's a very realistic possibility that we could be seeing them in the finals this next year. I think and that starts with acquiring MIKAL Bridges. Having MIKAL Bridges, adding him into the mix, he's a guy that he's one of the best role players in the league. He's a guy you can bring in off the bench. You can start him. It just allows the Knicks to do more things this year. And I think the only thing stopping the Knicks from making the finals this year are injuries, and if they can't sign a quality backup big this year, assuming things don't work out with Hardenstein. That was, their size played a big factor in their success last year, being able to rotate between Mitchell Robinson and Hardenstein at the primary 5 position, which also gave Julius Randle more freedom to roam offensively, and do different things offensively, similar to Rudy Gobert's effect on the Timberwolves for Cat this past season. I think that those are the only two things that can stop the Knicks are injuries, because we saw how injuries devastated their team last year. They were literally down to their last man. Josh Hart having to play 40 plus minutes a game, being used like a mule out there, playing literally not sitting the entire game. Timeouts were the only breaks this man had. So I think if this team can stay healthy and they're able to bring in Hardenstein or another backup big to play behind Mitchell Robinson, I think this team, there's really nothing stopping this team from making a finals push this year. This really just makes me more disappointed in my Sixers than anything else. We draft this guy a few years ago. We have him in the back. He's in the jersey, he's in the hat, but we trade him draft night for Zaire Smith, a guy who averaged 1 point the next season. He played less than 20 games as a Sixer his entire career as a Sixer. We trade that guy for someone who has become one of the best role players in the NBA. We not only do that, but we were given a second chance to pursue him this offseason, bringing in another quality wing that we need, someone who can improve our team defensively and offensively, and we pass him up again. I mean, I've never been more disappointed by a franchise throughout my years of being a sports fan. I think this is why being a Sixers fan is one of the most frustrating experiences in sports culture as a whole. I'm convinced MIKAL Bridges had to have been talking to somebody's girl in the executive office or something, because this bias against him, it just makes no sense. There's a clear bias against this guy that makes no sense for someone who is a proven asset in the NBA on both defense and offense. He's always going to make your team better. I just don't understand it. This was the perfect opportunity for us to make up for the inconsistency of Tobias Harris. A guy who isn't worth a crumble cookie to me. Philly fans, you know what I'm talking about. I would take the crumble cookie. I'm taking the cookie over Tobias Harris every single time. We had a chance to bring in another wing guy along with Kelly Oubre, another wing guy who can score, who can play defense, who can make up for the lackluster play of Tobias Harris. He had a better year this year. Don't get me wrong. He had a better year this year. He was more consistent this year. But when it mattered, what did Tobias Harris do? He did as he always does. He falls short. MIKAL Bridges is a playoff player. He has finals. He has championship experience. He knows what it's like to play deep in the playoffs. He's a perimeter guy. He can score. This was our chance, Philly Sixers. This was our chance to make it right. Daryl Morey, this was our chance, and we blew it. So I've now given up all hope for the Sixers this year, because there's just nothing that especially as long as Joel Embiid is our main guy, there is nothing more we can do to make it past the second round in the playoffs. The only guy that we can consistently count on in the playoffs is Tyrese Maxey. If we're looking towards the future, Tyrese Maxey is the only guy that we can consistently count on to give us something. You know, Kelly Oubre did his thing last year. He was a great role player for us last year. But I'm saying in terms of putting up numbers, what Tobias Harris is supposed to be in terms of a scorer, a 3-level scorer, being efficient offensively, Tyrese Maxey is the only guy we can count on, because Joel Embiid, like I said, isn't going to be healthy. And Tobias Harris is just inconsistent. Crumble cookies are more consistent. Crumble cookies taste good all the time. Tobias Harris isn't a good offensive player all the time. This was acquiring, even pursuing MIKAL Bridges. It shows that Sixers are trying to take a step forward, not even trying to pursue MIKAL Bridges, choosing to pursue Paul George, a 30-plus-year-old Paul George who is injury prone, over MIKAL Bridges, who can play another 10 years in the league the same way he is now. It's really disrespectful to us as a fan base, if we're being quite honest. And honestly, it's wasting Joel Embiid's time. If you don't want to trade Joel Embiid, because I've said this before, I think the Sixers need to trade Joel Embiid. I think we need to get some pieces for him to shore up around Tyrese Maxey so that we can make more of a push into the finals. Guys who we know are going to be around in the playoffs. But if you're choosing to keep Joel Embiid, how does not acquiring MIKAL Bridges help that? These are the last few. We don't have many more years of Joel Embiid's prime. I mean, these are his prime years, and He's already not. He hasn't made it through one postseason since he's been a Sixer. He's been injury prone since first putting on the Sixers uniform. I think not acquiring a guy like MIKAL Bridges, it wastes Joel Embiid's time and it wastes our time as a fan base. Instead, you want to pursue a guy like Paul George in terms of a max contract deal. You're willing to offer Paul George, a guy who has been injury prone in the past, which has been as much as Joel Embiid, honestly, in the playoffs. You're willing to offer this guy a max contract, but you're not willing to make any offer towards MIKAL Bridges. There's just what is the bias here? There's some bias here that we as Philly fans aren't getting, and that it's frustrating because the Sixers organization, it makes it hard to be a Sixers fan. It makes it difficult to cheer. I feel like a Cowboys fan right now. I always having hope that my team is gonna make the NFC championship game, having one of the best teams during the regular season, having all the talent in the world on both sides of the ball from top to bottom, having a deep squad, still falling short in the first and second round. I just I don't understand what's going through the Sixers front office minds when it comes to dealing with MIKAL Bridges. And then to top it off, the Sixers continue their bad decision making in last night's draft. And this leads into our next topic of the day. Sixers picking up Jared McCain, number 16 overall in the draft. Now, this is no shade to Jared McCain. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm not saying he will be a bad player. You know, he seems like he has the intangibles needed to be a solid point guard in this league. You know, he has a nice handle. He can finish at the rim. He's shown to be able to score. He's not what the Sixers needed. He's not the player the Sixers needed. The player that the Sixers did need, that would have been a great pickup, was a player that went the very next pick at number 17th overall to LA in Dalton Connect. Now I know Dalton Connect is an older guy, but it doesn't get more Philly than Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect is the player that the Sixers need. He's a wing guy. He's a guy that first of all, he's a guy that knows how to play through adversity. He's a guy that knows how to play successfully against adversity and beat all odds. We're talking about a JUCO product, had to claw his way to the top, transferring to Northern Colorado, and then earning a spot on Tennessee's team in the toughest conference in the league. And may I say, whose production did not waver throughout his entire career, no matter what level he was playing on, no matter what the competition was. We're talking about a JUCO product, a guy who went from playing in JUCO to now being arguably the best player in the SEC conference, the most competitive conference in the country. The SEC Player of the Year, the league's leading scorer, the Julius Erving Award recipient, which goes to the top small forward in the country. He's a natural 3-level scorer, another guy who would have made up for the inconsistency of Tobias Harris. And if we're talking about what it takes to be a Philadelphia athlete, having that attitude, having that mental toughness, it doesn't get any more mentally tough than Dalton Connect. You know, I don't think Jared McCain has the mindset to be able to withstand the pressure that comes from being a Philadelphia athlete. You know, this is no shame to him. I don't think he was the right fit. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm not saying he will be a bad player, but I'm saying specifically for what the Sixers needed, the better choice was Dalton Connect. But the Sixers aren't the only one that made a mistake on draft night. This is leading into our next topic. The team that made the worst mistake on draft night were the San Antonio Spurs in trading away Rob Dillingham to Minnesota. The Spurs gave up someone who could have been a potential star for them, a potential Robin to their franchise player in Batman in Wemby. Could have been a duo for, you know, their future duo to move that franchise forward under Pop while Pop is still around. I think it was I think that was a worse move than what the Sixers did last night. Jared McCain is at least a good player. Someone who we could get some use out of. He's not the player that I think was the best fit for them, but it wasn't a terrible move, especially compared to what the Spurs did last night. But for the Timberwolves, I think this was a steal for them. I think the Timberwolves this can make the Timberwolves the best team in the West with what Dilly can bring to this squad. I mean, we're talking about a team that was already a premier team in the better conference in the NBA. They have their future franchise superstar in Anthony Edwards. They have their co-pilot in Cat, who has shown to be a 30 points guy who can supplement Ant. I think bringing in Dilly to this situation, I think we can now picture a very realistic big three in Minnesota for years to come. I also think that Dilly is coming into a similar situation that JJ McCarthy has come into for the Vikings. He's in a situation where he doesn't have to be thrown into the fire right away. He has time to sort of develop and mature in his game behind Sam Darnold. He has his premier weapons to work with in Justin Jefferson, in Jordan Addison, in TJ Hawkinson, one of the best O-lines in the league, one of the genius offensive minds in the game in McConnell, at head coach. I think Dilly is in a similar situation because he now doesn't have to be thrown into the fire just like JJ McCarthy. He gets to sit and learn behind a vet like Mike Connolly, a better veteran than Sam Darnold for JJ McCarthy. If anything, he's in a better situation than JJ McCarthy. He is a better vet to learn from. He's already on a playoff caliber team, and this is a guy who can really be a Robin to Ant's Batman, or a Robin number 2 to Ant and Cat. I think that having a big three, if Dilly can take a step forward and step into the player that I really think he can become, being as young as he is, being able to come into a team that is in a position like this Timberwolves team, I think this could really very realistically be a finals run for the Timberwolves as well. If not this year, then definitely next year. He gets to learn from a guy like Mike Connolly, and I think his game, it's another viable backcourt option for this Timberwolves team in Mike Connolly and Dilly. I think we could very realistically see Dilly transitioning into a starting role this year as well, which would be even more promising for this Minnesota squad. And this is a guy who is shifty. He's got a handle. He can finish well at the rim. He's got sort of an acrobatic style midair finish similar to Kyrie Irving when it comes to attacking the rim. He can shoot. He can. I think his ability to run an offense and run the floor will only improve. Being Mike Connolly's teammate and being on the team that he's on, surrounded by older guys. The Timberwolves have everything they need to make a finals push, just like the Knicks. So I think very realistically, we could see a finals matchup this year of the Timberwolves and the Knicks. But that's a wrap for No Shame with Shane. I appreciate you for tuning in and kicking off this journey with me. We're going to keep the takes coming. We're going to keep the content flowing. Be sure to follow us on social media at No Shame with Shane. We're active on all social media accounts: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, and Apple Music. But for now, I'm Shane Fordham signing off, and we'll be back next week.